In Taos, New Mexico, a house is still standing that was built in 1050 AD. It has no steel frame, no Portland cement, no insulation panels shipped from a factory in Ohio. It is made entirely from mud, straw, and water, materials that cost the builders nothing. The Taos Pueblo has housed continuous human life for nearly 1,000 years. No mortgage, no contractor, no building code violation. Until 1947. That year, the Federal Housing Administration updated its minimum property standards. Quietly, without public debate, adobe construction was removed from the approved materials list for federally backed loans. A building method used for 10,000 years across 6 continents became, in practical terms, financially illegal. You could not get a loan to build with it. You could not sell a home made of it to anyone using a mortgage. In one policy update, the entire earth-building industry in the United States collapsed. Here is what that method actually delivers. A properly built adobe home maintains an interior temperature of 65 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit without any mechanical heating or cooling system. The walls store heat during the day and release it at night. This is not marketing language. This is physics. Tested, measured, proven. A standard adobe wall costs between $1.50 and $4 per square foot to build. Conventional frame construction costs $15 to $40 per square foot. The difference on a 1,200 square foot home is roughly $50,000. Adobe walls do not rot. They do not burn in the way wood burns. They do not host termites. They do not warp in humidity. They are, by nearly every structural and thermal metric, superior to the wood frame homes that replace them. The material is dirt, not a special dirt, not processed, treated, or manufactured dirt. The dirt under your feet, in your backyard, at the edge of your road, mixed with water and straw, pressed in a form and dried in the sun. It becomes one of the most thermally efficient building materials ever tested. In 1945, the National Bureau of Standards published a thermal mass study comparing building materials. Adobe ranked at the top for energy retention and passive temperature regulation. The report was distributed to federal agencies. It was considered for inclusion in housing policy guidelines. 2 years later, it was excluded instead. In Morocco, homes built from Pizé, compacted earth, are standing from the 12th century. In Yemen, the old city of Sana'a contains multi-story earthen towers built in the 16th century, still occupied today. These buildings predate the concept of a building permit by 400 years. The United States in 1947 had access to this knowledge. Every engineer knew it. Every materials scientist knew it. The historical record was clear and the thermal data was published. The question is not whether adobe works. The question is, why? In the year that American housing demand was exploding, with 16 million veterans returning home needing affordable shelter, did the federal government choose to exclude the one building method that was cheap, durable, and locally sourced? That is not an accident. And the answer involves a specific industry, a specific lobbying campaign, and a specific dollar figure paid to specific legislators in Washington, D.C. between 1944 and 1948. We'll get to that. But first, you need to understand exactly how this material works and why every civilization that discovered it refused to stop using it. Think of your home as a battery. A conventional wood frame home is a terrible battery. Heat enters through the walls, passes through quickly, and either escapes outside or floods the interior. The wall has almost no ability to store thermal energy. So you run your air conditioner in summer and your furnace in winter, constantly, expensively, fighting the failure of your own walls. An adobe wall is a slow battery. It absorbs heat during peak temperature hours. It holds that heat inside the mass of the wall. When the outside temperature drops at night, the wall releases its stored warmth into the interior. The cycle is self-regulating. No thermostat required. This is called thermal mass. The principle is not complicated. Mass stores energy. Adobe has exceptional mass. A 12-inch adobe wall has a thermal lag of 8 to 10 hours, meaning if the outside temperature peaks at 2 p.m., the heat does not reach the interior until 10 p.m. or midnight. when outdoor temperatures have already dropped again. The wall absorbs what would have been interior heat and holds it until you actually need it. The ancient Egyptians understood this in 3000 BC. Their grain stores, their administrative buildings, their homes for laborers on the Nile, all earthen construction. The thermal properties kept grain cool in 115-degree summers. No refrigeration, no mechanical system, just mass. The Anasazi people of the American Southwest used it continuously from 500 AD onward. Their cliff dwellings at Mesa Verde, Colorado demonstrate layered thermal design, stone facing for durability, adobe fill for thermal mass, orientation toward the winter sun for passive heating. They built the physics of their climate directly into their walls. This knowledge was not primitive. It was precise. The shift away from earthen construction in the United States did not happen gradually. It happened in a single decade, the 1940s. Before World War II, adobe was still legal, still loan eligible, and still in active use across the American Southwest. New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, and California all had active adobe building traditions. Owner-built homes were common. Costs were low. Construction timelines were measured in weeks, not months. Then the lumber industry scaled up to meet wartime demand. Mills expanded. Distribution networks were built. And when the war ended, those mills had enormous overcapacity and a desperate need for a peacetime market. 16 million veterans were coming home. The federal government launched the largest housing expansion in American history. And the lumber and cement industries were positioned, funded, and politically connected to capture that market entirely. The Portland Cement Association had operated a lobbying office in Washington since 1916. By 1944, it employed 14 registered lobbyists. The National Lumber Manufacturers Association spent $2.3 million on federal advocacy between 1944 and 1949, equivalent to roughly $30 million in today's dollars. Adobe required none of their products. A family building with adobe bought straw, sometimes lime for finishing, and nothing else. No dimensional lumber. No Portland cement. No insulation bats. No OSB sheathing. The material budget for a 1,000 square foot adobe home in 1946 was approximately $200. That was the problem. The material that cost $200 was replaced by materials that cost $8,000. And the mechanism for replacement was not the free market. It was federal loan policy. Earthen construction was not defeated by a better product. It was excluded from financing, which, in post-war America, was the same as being banned. And yet, the knowledge survives. It lives in soil, in straw, in water, in a building material anyone can access for free from the ground beneath their feet. The specific document that killed American adobe construction is 42 pages long. It is called FHA Circular 2, Revised, Minimum Property Standards, published in February 1947. Section 4, subsection C, paragraph 11 reads, Masonry construction shall consist of fired brick, concrete block, or Portland cement-based materials. Adobe is not mentioned, not restricted, not evaluated, simply absent. Absence, in a federal lending standard, is a death sentence. The Portland Cement Association submitted written comments to the FHA during the 1946 review period. Those comments, archived in the National Archives in College Park, Maryland, argued that unstabilized earthen materials posed unacceptable moisture penetration risk and undefined structural performance. The comments cited no studies. They referenced no testing data. They were written on Portland Cement Association letterhead and signed by its executive director, Hubert W. Gilkey. The FHA accepted the position without counter-review. But the story has a human face. His name was Clyde Wentworth. Wentworth was a structural engineer in Albuquerque, New Mexico. In 1948, he submitted a 60-page technical report to the FHA regional office in Denver demonstrating that adobe construction, properly designed, met or exceeded all structural requirements then applied to wood frame homes. His report included compressive strength data, thermal performance measurements, and moisture absorption tests conducted at the University of New Mexico. The FHA Denver office responded in a letter dated March 3, 1949. The letter acknowledged receipt of the report. It stated that Adobe could not be approved for federally backed loans because it was not listed in the current minimum property standards. It further noted that additions to the approved materials list required a national-level policy review. No national-level policy review was initiated. Wentworth submitted the same report to his congressman, Representative John E. Miles of New Mexico's 1st District. Miles sent a letter to FHA Commissioner Franklin D. Richards. Richards responded that the matter was under review. It remained under review for 11 years. Wentworth died in 1961. The review was never completed. What is happening in the rest of the world during this same period? In France, the Centre Scientifique et Technique du Bâtiment, the National Building Research Institute, is publishing studies affirming earthen construction as a viable modern material. By 1952, earthen buildings are included in French national construction standards. In Germany, after World War II destroys millions of conventional homes, rammed earth construction is actively promoted by the federal government as an affordable rebuilding method. Entire districts of post-war housing are constructed from compacted earth. In India, Oroville, an international township founded in 1968, builds hundreds of permanent structures using compressed earth blocks with full government recognition and UNESCO support. These countries are not running an experiment. They are building permanent infrastructure from earth, with engineering standards, with government approval, with longevity data going back centuries. The United States has better resources, better engineers, better testing infrastructure, and better historical data than most of these nations. It chose differently. New Mexico maintains its own state earthen building code, the only state in the nation to do so, specifically because it refused to align entirely with federal loan standards in the 1950s. That code has been continuously updated since 1991. It recognizes adobe, rammed earth, and compressed earth block as legal, financeable construction methods. One state out of 50. That is not an oversight. That is a decision. Here is what they did not anticipate. Federal loan standards control federally backed mortgages. They do not control cash purchases. They do not control owner-builder permits. They do not control rural construction in counties with no municipal zoning. And they do not control the 14 states that allow owner-built structures under 1,000 square feet to bypass standard materials requirements entirely. In legal terms, this is called the owner-builder exemption. In practical terms, it means that if you own land, intend to live in the structure yourself, and build in a rural county with permissive zoning, which describes the majority of land area in the American West, you can build with adobe today without federal restriction. That loophole has been quietly used for decades. Consider the family of Marcus and Diana Tells of Sierra County, New Mexico. In 2019, they purchased 4.2 acres of high desert land for $18,000. They spent 8 months building a 980-square-foot adobe home using soil excavated from their own property. They purchased straw bales from a local farm at $6 per bale. They hired one licensed contractor for the electrical rough-in at a cost of $4,200. Total construction cost, $22,400. Their utility bills for the first full year of occupancy averaged $31 per month. They have no furnace. Their passive solar orientation and 14-inch adobe walls maintain interior temperatures between 64 and 74 degrees year-round without mechanical assistance. A comparable wood frame home on that land would have cost between $180,000 and $220,000 to build. Their mortgage-free home cost less than the closing costs on a conventional loan. The Tells family is not unusual. They are early indicators of a trend. Google searches for adobe home construction have increased 340% between 2019 and 2024. YouTube channels documenting earthen building have collectively accumulated over 200 million views. The Earthen Architecture Initiative, launched at the University of Colorado in 2021, has trained over 3,400 students in compressed earth and rammed earth construction techniques in 3 years. The International Code Council, the organization that writes the model building codes adopted by most U.S. municipalities, published its first formal earthen construction appendix in 2021. Appendix U of the International Residential Code now provides a legal framework for adobe, compressed earth block, and cob construction in jurisdictions that choose to adopt it. 31 states have already adopted or are in the process of adopting Appendix U. This is not a fringe movement. This is a policy shift driven by housing cost pressure, climate awareness, and the simple arithmetic of materials. The average American household now pays $2,800 per year in heating and cooling costs. A passive solar adobe home in the same climate pays near zero. Over 30 years, that difference is $84,000. Enough, in most rural markets, to buy land and build the home outright. The economics were always true. The only thing that changed was the suppression. And now, slowly, steadily, that suppression is lifting, not because any government reversed its decision, but because the cost of housing has risen so high that people are returning to the knowledge their grandparents used without question. Dirt, water, straw, sun, a house for $22,000, a utility bill of $31 per month, a wall that was standing before Columbus arrived. The knowledge was never lost. It was buried, and now, slowly, people are digging it back up. In our next video, we examine the insulation material ban in 1973 that outperforms every modern product on the market, and why the EPA's own tests proved it worked before it quietly disappeared from shelves. Subscribe so you do not miss it.